What up, you guys? Welcome back to Pro Publications YouTube channel. The channel talk about zines and DIY publishing. And as always, I'm reading a bunch of stuff to just peep out the art. And I just finished rereading Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, and Death Note was on my to read pile. I don't remember how I got this, but it was in my pile. So I peeped it out. One of my homies, he's really big on this. And the story is getting better now that I'm halfway through it, but the beginning of it, I really didn't vibe with it, right? Let me see, does it say it here? Yeah, the first volume, first section is called Boredom. So I don't really ever get bored, so I didn't vibe with that. But the art, there's a lot that I took away from it. And like some of this stuff, I wonder if it's digital, right? Like, is this digital or is this painting? I'm not sure. But one of the things that they did that I liked a lot was the way they contrast the Shinigami, the demon. The way they draw him in this world, it feels other, right? It feels like you are definitely in a different dimension, a different plane. And I like the way this reads, right? Like if you look at this versus the human world, it's so much more vibrant, dark, and it translates well that this is from his perspective, right? And then when you get into the human world, it feels bleak and almost empty. And you gotta see, like, when they draw the Shinigami in here with the human, like the way this all translates. Like even when you get the Death Note, and that's just, it's smart cartooning, really, like how everything is just kind of plain and blank. But anytime you get the Death Note, or anytime you see the Shinigami, it's so dark, right? The way it contrasts. Look at, like, even this panel right here. And I like that, the way it translates, the way it's like, even in this panel, the Shinigami feels like he belongs in a whole nother dimension, like a whole nother comic. And I like that. Like, I'm telling you, like this panel right here and this panel, but it's throughout the comic. And there's other characters that fit with the Shinigami, which I think are cues. I don't know, because I haven't finished the whole book, and I'm sure there's multitude of volumes, because my homie was like, if you like the first one, I'll lend you borrow the whole collection. I have it. And I'm pretty sure that that's going to be a visual cue, and I'll show you guys that as it shows up. But like it just reads so well. This is one thing too that I really want to try to start implementing some of my art. It's kind of motion lines, that Ditko kind of Spider-Man stuff. And another thing that I just recently purchased, just today actually, when I was like reading through this, was Zipatone, because the artist used so much Zipatone that I'm like, man, I think I should try to dabble in that and see what I can come up with, right? And so like, it's almost like he uses brushes only when he uses the Shinigami in that demon world. And then like, you see, like this looks like a brush to me, and then this looks like it might just be, you know, a felt pen or a marker or something like that, with all the Zipatone in there. You see, like even this with the shadowing. I'm wondering how much of this is like analog versus digital. Here was another of those panels where I'm talking about, like, that just looks so good and reads so well, because it's true. It's like this creature doesn't belong in this world, so how do you translate that? And I feel like the artist did really well in translating that. I guess I should mention the creators, right? So story by Sugami Oba, and the art is by Takeshi Obata. So this is, it's pretty beast. The story structure, it's a little hard in the beginning to really like invest yourself into it, but I feel like once you get to the pandemonium, it becomes really fun, and it becomes, and it's very weird that I picked this up after Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, because you can see the difference in storytelling between Western versus Eastern storytelling. Because the Eastern storytelling it's a bit slower. The way the mangas read, a lot of the manga, it's a lot slower, and the writing, it breathes. So sometimes, like what Johann Basco would do in 2 pages, it'll be done in 20 or 30 pages in a manga, and it's just slower and reads more, and there's always more emotional undertones. But the subtext is interesting. It's this idea that like if you could basically play God and decide who lives and who dies, you know, what would occur. And so that's very interesting. I like the way he uses these black borders to kind of translate like flashbacks. Right? That's one of those things of like, as a cartoonist, I'm always trying to understand how do you translate things visually, right? So like going back to Punch Drunk Zen and the flashback scene that I just finished up, like I was saying, like I'm trying to use that panel layout as a way of translating flashbacks. Especially if you decide to like do a prolonged kind of story, like this is pages. This is one of those other pages that I wonder how much of this was done digitally versus how much of it is just straight up art. Because a lot of it feels like it's art, but it might just be mixed media, almost like collage mixed with art on top of it. But it looks good, and I like the way the artist kind of like jumps back and forth from different visual cues and ways of communicating through the art. Going back to that, like every time they're in a panel together, this creature looks like he doesn't belong in there, and it's just done so well. I like that too. Right? Anytime they're in there together, just look at that. He just, you know, like he doesn't belong there. Like, what is that creature doing there? This is that point of I was talking about where like this character is also done all in brush, and they allude that they don't know who this character is. But for me, because of the visual cues, I'm pretty sure this might be an angel or something of the sort, because this character and then L feel almost like otherworldly. And it's because of the visual cue, because anytime you see the Shinigami, he doesn't look like he belongs in this world. And anytime you see L or his counterpart, his friend, it also feels like these characters don't belong in this world. But this is some of the stuff that I saw, and I was like, you know what? I really want to try to use more Zipatone, because it just adds so much more value to the art. And like I said, like I like this story structure. The beginning of the bit, the motivation behind the two main characters thus far, not really for me. I've never really been bored. There's always something to do. But once you get past that, like I said, this idea that he thinks he can do good through violence, we always know that violence begets violence. And so then how does that translate? The pandemonium that occurs. Right? And like, look at this demon realm. Like anytime, like the way the artist changes tools to translate like different planes of reality and different things that are going on, it's just done well. Some of the things that are tropes to me in a lot of the mangas, it's always this thing with school. Like, I don't know if they're all Spider-Man fans or what the hell, but it's always like, oh, and I still gotta make my grades, and I still gotta take my test. And I'm always like, man, if you have a book where you can kill people anywhere in the world just by writing their name down and not get caught, that's the portion of it I don't get. You know, like, every manga revolves around school and grades, and probably one of the things that I have a problem with, because I never fully care about school. Like, even now that I'm in the bachelor's program, like I spend way more time reading comics and drawing than I do paying attention to schoolwork. That's one of the premises that I like, that because this main character, Light, has the Death Note, he's the only one that can see the Shinigami. But this panel right here, one of the things I like about it, like I said, is like the use of the Zipatone right here on the glass. I think it adds a lot. See this, I wonder, is that Zipatone or is that an ink wash? Because I know the texture on his jacket is Zipatone. Or is it Zipatone? Because I wonder sometimes if people aren't just using some sort of a, program and adding that digitally after the fact. I don't know. But this is that character that I'm talking about, right? The way it translates is like he feels, and like I said, like the visual cue to me is that he's also done heavily, inked up. It looks like it's brush. And then the Shinigami is also done through brush. So I'm wondering how much of this is basically giving you to understand through the visual cue that this character that has been kind of like sanctioned as the only one that could figure out what's going on, if he is also, maybe there's a duality, right? So you have the Shinigami and Light versus, this L character and his counterpart, and if that's what they're setting up. Like I said, I don't know, because I haven't read all the volumes and I'm only halfway through this one. You see what I mean? Like a panel like this in a Western comic, I couldn't even imagine that being there. But it reads, Back to that Zipatone. See how much value that adds? The 3 suits, but they all stand out. You can tell the difference between them. That Zipatone right there looks good too. See, and this right here, I wonder, like, that's the stuff I'm talking about where, like, I can't imagine that being done by hand. Like, it's almost like they ripped that picture from somewhere. So, like a mixed media panel. And then they drew just this thing on top of it. Right here as well. So there's a lot of elements in this that really, call to me as an, as a guy trying to get better at cartooning. And it's just the way the art reads and the visual cues that they're giving us. Completely dig the way they draw this character too, man. The Shinigami and that whole realm. One thing that I wish they would do, which I don't know they do in the later volumes, but as Light spends more time with the Shinigami, maybe have his world start turning differently, because he does, and that's the writing that I like a lot. He starts viewing the world very differently, and he starts viewing humans and humanity very differently. And like I said, like, it's so strange that I picked this up after Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, because there is a lot of correlation. There's big differences, but this correlation of like viewing humanity, questions about morality, trying to understand, the end game. Whereas Johnny the Homicidal Maniac thought things didn't really matter, this character feels like basically he's playing God. And that complex, and that's the only reason why his school thing kind of does matter in the story structure, because he's kind of arrogant. He's this character that's the best at school, the smartest at it all, and then he's given this immense power. Obviously he thinks he knows better than anyone else what to do with it, and so then the story goes. And this Shinigami, you can tell that he knows more than what Light knows. He knows that this is the beginning of something really, really bad. He doesn't yet. And I haven't gotten there, but I can already tell there's going to be copycats and things like that, because one of the plot points is like this internet following that's gone on, and like how, like there's a cult being built around this phenomenon that's occurring. And obviously this character, he's digging that there's a cult behind what he's doing. At that, one of the clever writing points in this was that he wanted the world to know that this was occurring, but he had to devise a way of getting everyone to know that someone is doing this without being able to track or prove who's doing it. And all this is done pretty well. Like I said, like these read slower than the comics I'm used to. But that just might be, you know, because I'm used to reading a certain way that stories are told. See, mixed media again, right? Like this had to have been added, and then this was the drawing on top. I can see why this was a very popular manga, because the story is kind of fun, inviting. It does, like I said, ask questions about morality and about power and the abuse of power and who gets to define what's virtuous or not, like this one too. So this was actually a good flip through. Like I said, the art, the visual cues is something that I'm really taking away from. The story structure, the way it breathes as well. It's not a bad story by any means. It's just not something that really calls to me. But maybe it gets better. Like I said, I'm only like 100 pages in the first volume, and I think that this first volume is 195 pages. So I'm already just halfway through the first volume, but I don't know. And I don't even know how many volumes there are of Death Note. Like I said, this is just something that was on my reading pile, and I finally decided to pick it up. So let me know, you guys, have you guys read Death Note? Have you guys seen the anime? Have you guys seen the live action? Are they worth my time? Once I finish this, depending upon how I like this first volume, I might hit my homie up and get the full collection just to read them. All right, guys, thank you for watching. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Lights.